How's it going? And welcome to episode 26 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at On the Wire Pod. And of course, if you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, please take a second to let us know what you think. I am Adam Howe, and as always, I am joined by the 2020 TGFBI champion, Kevin Hastings. Kevin, I already know that this is going to be a, quote, very long pod, and honestly, I'm here for it. It's good. How you doing? How you feeling about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. A few notes on the outline you give us every week. I have several pages of notes here on my legal pad. I have about 17 browsers open. And as we were just discussing off the air, I still feel behind before we have to get our bids in tomorrow evening.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about that. So obviously there are a ton of things to break down thanks to a little thing called the Major League Baseball trade deadline that happened on Friday. And luckily, we are extremely lucky to have with us someone who is no stranger to such situations. Mr. Todd Zola joins us to break down all the trades and how it may impact your FAAB bidding this weekend. Todd, of course, can be found on the Twitter at Todd Zola, and of course, a regular contributor to RotoWire and ESPN, as well as multiple other outlets, and has run a little old site you might have heard of in masterball.com, and in one form or another since 1997. Todd has multiple well-respected fantasy championships to his name, including both NL Tout Wars and Mixed Labor in the same season of 2016. And of course, the predecessor to Kevin's TGFBI championship in 2019. It makes me feel that much more inadequate being surrounded by you guys. So thanks for that. Todd, thank you so much for joining us. How's this season going for you so far?
You're not gonna, you made some little notes here. You're not going to read that, or was that just to yourself?
That was mostly to myself, but yeah, I want to make sure that I speak correctly if those topics do come up.
Unfortunately, you have a little note, any others? Just
sure
so people know, Adam is being cute, and he says, don't use the word quarter pole or scuffling, because there are a couple of pet peeves of mine. Unfortunately, my friend, is a third, and that is the misuse of impact, which you've already misused twice. Impact. I mean, it's influence. It's really technically not impact. I don't make a big of a deal about this one because it's even more widely misused than the others. But impact actually involves something hitting something. That's impact. The trade moves may not have an impact on a team. But you know what? So much other stuff to worry about. I'm going to excuse it. I just appreciate the invitation. I love helping out the Pitcher List podcast. Great guys, Alex and Nick. Or Nick and Alex. You're going to put them in the right order. Nowadays, I think it's Alex and Nick, isn't it?
It might be, yeah.
Yeah. We like to, speaking of TGFBI, Clay Lincoln, I like to joke. We had Alex on our MLB.com radio show, and like the next day he became famous. So we like to say we gave him the rub.
Very nice.
All right. Like we said, we have a ton to talk about, and it all revolves around the trade deadline that finished off on Friday at 4:00. So we've had over 24 hours now. We record this, of course, on Saturday nights to digest this. By the time you're listening to this, you may have had 48 hours to digest it. So we're going to get right into it. We've revamped the news and notes section of the pod this week to reflect what we're going to be talking about mostly, and that is the trade deadline. What was nice is no matter how big or how small, every single team made at least one move that impacted their major league squad.
You did it again.
And it affected it too. And it influenced it.
Man.
Although, you know what? Some of these moves did impact squads.
Yeah,
That's how bad it was. Or how...
All right, they've affected their major league squad.
Be you. I'm just being a wise guy. Be you. Like I said, it's widely used at this point. It's like ain't. It's going to be accepted soon enough.
All right, so this week we're going to go through team by team, and I'm going to ask you guys what influence their moves as a whole may have on your FAAB considerations. Maybe there's a lineup opening or two. Perhaps it's caused the player to be DFA'd or optioned to make room. Maybe a change in the rotation or a current starter gets pushed to the bullpen. Maybe, just maybe, a closer role changed hands. I know that's rare, but it happens during trade season. I didn't list any prospects in here, and I didn't feel like had a shot of making an influence to their 2021 Major League season. But if you feel differently, please feel free to, bring them up as we break it down. So let's get right into it. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to start in the AL East. We are going to go division by division. We're going to start in Toronto. From everything I could find, I could read, or I could keep track of, they brought in a couple of pitchers. They got Brad Hand and Joaquin Soria in their bullpen, and then Jose Berrios in their rotation. And I didn't really notice they lost a whole bunch on their major league roster. So tell me, what impact do you think that this has to the Toronto, and is there any changes that are worth looking at in FAAB?
Offensively, I don't see a whole lot. As you said, they didn't lose much. My concern with Toronto is for those rostering Brad Hand. I'm not so sure he is the sole contributor in the ninth inning for Toronto. His 22.5% strikeout rate is the lowest since he was a starter for the Marlins way back in 2015. His 4.30 FIP is his highest since 2012. Going to the AL East. Now, the thing is, with the schedule going forward for this first month, there's not a whole lot of AL East competition. They do play 8 games this coming week, 4 of them at home, now back at the Rogers Center versus Boston, the other 4 versus Cleveland with a doubleheader in there. But then they go to the Los Angeles Angels. They go to Seattle. They have a couple games at Washington. They have 2 series with Detroit, 1 at home, 1 away, and they have the White Sox for 4 games. Big concern for me with Brad Hand is AL East, the way he's been pitching. The same concerns we had towards the end of 2019, and then he had 16 saves last year and 20 whatever he has so far this season. But as we get into September, I'm worried here. And with Soria, with Romano, some of these other guys, I think the save situation in Toronto is still the mess it's been all season, quite frankly.
Yeah, I said in my bullpen chart earlier this week that the Blue Jays have shown, or they said early in the season that, they like Yordan Romano in high leverage situations, just not necessarily in the ninth inning. But he did end up with the save on Friday with Brad Hand pitching, throwing 19 pitches of his own as well in the same game. So something definitely to monitor. I would not be dropping Romano as you're speculating on other options in FAAB this weekend.
Am I allowed to say something?
Of course.
That's why you're here, Todd.
You know what? I think Brad Hand has a job. It's just a matter of whether he keeps it or not. I don't think there's. We'll talk a little while about Keg Krimble and Liam Hendricks. I think they're splitting it. It's been announced at least it's been announced that way. I think it's Hand's job to lose. Whether you feel he'll lose it or not, that's an argument or a discussion that we can obviously have. And I don't think he's safe, but I do think he's going to get first dibs.
Yeah, he obviously has the experience and brings in that aspect of it as well. And he's still getting paid for it as well. All right, Todd, we will go over to Boston. Made sure to give this team to you as the alternate Red Sox fan on the pod. They didn't make nearly as many moves, obviously, as a lot of fan bases. And I'm a Red Sox fan myself, but I haven't lived in Boston since 2008. It's strange to say is that what I don't miss local sports radio talk shows in the Boston area. It was just too much.
When was the last time you listened to it?
Yeah, I've listened to EEI like remotely, sporadically since. It was
When was the last time you listened to it like on a regular basis?
2008.
All right, I've been living here all my life, and
Sure.
You've listened to it more recently than I have.
Yeah.
No, I
I
agree.
knew that's where you were going, Todd.
Yeah, it's and not that national talk isn't great, all that much better, but no, it's just it's terrible. I can't deal with it. So anyway, but that's what satellite radio's for.
Exactly. And so they didn't make that many moves. They did lose Michael Chavis over, I don't know who he upset to be sent to Pittsburgh, but I assume he just did something wrong. They did gain Kyle Schwarber from the Nationals and Hansel Robles into their bullpen as well. My favorite part of this is the quote I saw about the possibility of seeing Kyle Schwarber at first base for the Red Sox. But do you see these moves making an impact somewhere else on the roster that may affect some opportunities for some FAAB speculation this weekend?
Not really. It just solidifies some. Michael Chavez, you made the little joke. It's basically he was superfluous at this point. Bobby Dahlback, Kiki Hernandez, and of course Jeter Downs on the farm. Position-wise, there was just no spot, and now they have a logjam in the outfield too. So I don't see any significant moves or loss of playing time. We'll see what happens when Schwarber is healthy. They are going to try Kyle Schwarber at first base. You can't just become a first baseman. It doesn't work that way. People think it's probably easier to become a first baseman than to become a shortstop, but it's not easy. You just can't do it. Especially, I know people realize, and I hope that people don't start to just follow me when I say this in Red Sox Nation, Sandra Bogarts is not a very good shortstop defensively. He just isn't. The numbers he's not. And I think he needs help, and Rafael Devers has improved, but the arm's a little erratic. So I'm more concerned about the confidence on the left side of the infield if Schwarber can't handle it. Hansel Robles just replaces Brendan Workman, which is an upgrade unto itself. I don't think there's anything really to be concerned about there. If there is a loser, it could be Jarren Duran down the line. We'll have to see. But and as far as what the Red Sox did or did not do, I may be the rare Red Sox fan that is fine with the approach. Chaim Bloom, this is Chaim Bloom. If you hire Chaim Bloom, this is what he's going to do. He's not Dave Dombrowski. They hired Dave Dombrowski to sell the farm and get a championship. And guess what, folks? He did his job. It was Bloom's job to rebuild the system that Dombrowski gave away, gave away. So I'm all right. Of course, it puts the team under pressure to win, in the next 3 years, maybe 2 in the next 5, something like that. Really hard to do. Who was the last team to repeat? KC, Kevin was in twice in a row, but they only won once.
Yeah, and Texas before him did the same thing. It's been a while.
It's so hard to repeat. Take the one you get, and look at Chicago. We'll talk about the Cubs. They got there. Look what Washington did. A lot of the ability to be able to do what these teams did is because they've got the equity. They won one. But anyway, we have nothing really for a team not to say much. I sure said a lot about Boston.
Todd, are you concerned at all with you mentioned that there's a little bit of a logjam in the outfield now, and if not Duran, do you worry about any of the other guys out there going into more of a platoon role, like a Hunter Renfroe? As good as he's been most of the season, that would be where my mind would go, especially with his history.
No, I don't think so. I think if might he lose a little playing time? Sure, maybe, but he's too valuable defensively. And you know how hitting goes up and down. Even though he's right-handed, he can hit. He's too good defensively. And if anything, like I mentioned, it's Verdugo going to center and Duran being sent down. I hope I don't get canceled because of that. And if it delays Jeter Downs acceleration and we don't see him this year and Enrique Hernandez plays second base, all right, so be it. And keeping in mind that Christian Arroyo is coming back as well. There's going to be a log, with Arroyo and Marvin Gonzalez, and I already talked about Bobby Dahlback. There's going to be players that are losing playing time, but I don't think I'm going on a limb and saying sell your Dahlback, because I don't think people are like holding on to Dahlback and going to be disagreeing with me.
All right, we'll move on to Tampa. Kevin, Tampa, of course, made one of the earlier deals, bringing in Nelson Cruz. They also brought in a couple of relievers, JT Chargois, Sean Armstrong, and then at the deadline, Jordan Luplow into their lineup, or partially into their lineup. Of course, they lost Rich Hill to the Mets, and then also somewhat surprisingly sold off Diego Castillo to the Mariners. So, what changes do you see from these moves that FAAB bidders should be keeping a lookout on their waiver wires?
I think they've just enhanced what they do. And we had some guys getting a little more playing time than we expected. Prior to his injury, Manny Margot was getting a lot of playing time. Since his return, he has only started versus left-handed starting pitching. 3 starts in 7 games now, including tonight. That's a problem for some of my teams. I had been counting on Margot to come back. Choi and Yandy Diaz, both getting starts versus both righties and lefties. That's interesting to me. Nick Anderson's rehab delayed due to COVID issues. We don't know what that is. We don't know what the delay is. Fairbanks hurt as well with Castillo gone. Now we actually have 4 guys listed on roster resource as a closer for Tampa. A lot of people think of Tampa that way. Typically, they do use one guy a majority of the time. They just use a whole bunch of other guys rather than just 1 or 2. Like many other teams. So now the closing situation there is crazy until we know what is up with Nick Anderson and Fairbanks with his shoulder inflammation. The most interesting thing to me, and we've been talking about it for a couple weeks, I think with Rich Hill gone, Josh Fleming has not been good in the games he has started. He's given up multiple runs in every game he started. And Shane Baz, once the Olympics are over, I don't think it's going to be long before we see him in Tampa in the rotation with Luis Patino.
Especially with the news on Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patino stepping up is huge this week. He wasn't really giving him length, but this week he gave the Rays length, which is really good to see. We should note, I've had the sound down, so I don't know exactly what's been going on, but Jeffrey Springs is in that closer quandary with the Rays. He hurt himself a little while ago fielding a bunt, a Rafael Devers bunt. So he looked like he was in severe pain, but he was able to walk off the field. Just pointed to that could be one fewer arm to look towards in the log jam that is the Tampa Bay bullpen.
Yeah, a lot of us would like to see Kittredge, and he pitched the sixth.
Yeah, he's the fireman. Yeah, he comes out and when necessary. Yeah. Tampa just reshuffles the cards, reshuffles the chairs, and they just always come out ahead. I think when Fairbanks comes back, if he comes back, he's probably the lead, like you mentioned, with Anderson kind of being delayed a bit. But I'm with you on Baz, and Chris Archer's coming back. So with the thoracic outlet, the long-term prognosis isn't all that great, but short-term pitchers can get away with it. It's just going to be, I don't know how many, I don't use the word games they can play because that's not what Tampa does things the right way. They don't play games, if you will, with opener and close primary pitcher. But I don't know, can they afford to do that with Baz, et cetera, bring up Brent Honeywell? They may need to just trust these guys as traditional starters from the get-go.
All right, we'll move on to the Yankees. Todd, they brought in a bunch of bats, or at least two big ones, Joey Gallo earlier on in the week, and then Anthony Rizzo from the Cubs, as the Cubs sold off anything that wasn't nailed down. They brought in Joely Rodriguez alongside Joey Gallo from Texas, and then Andrew Heaney from the Angels into their rotation as well. They lost a couple of bullpen pieces, basically making room on their 40-man roster for a couple of these other additions in Luis Cessa and Justin Wilson. Is there anything in the Bronx worth keeping an eye out as far as FAAB consideration may be concerned?
Not really from a team perspective. I'm a little surprised that Aaron Judge is playing center field and not Joey Gallo, but that doesn't change a whole lot. Maybe there is. Andrew Heaney, improves opportunities for wins, but the ratio potentially takes a bit of a hit. Now, Yankee Stadium is one of those interesting venues in that, yeah, it's plus for homers, but it actually suppresses runs. So it's not as bad if you don't give up homers as it might seem. But I don't know the rostership numbers, but I'm going to guess that Heaney was he's probably available in some shallower mixed leagues. You don't chase wins unless, of course, you need wins. He now becomes somewhat interesting, especially this coming week. He's got 2 starts on tap. So I think depending on your level of desperation, Heaney now becomes a somewhat attractive target for those that are a little bit behind in wins and need to make up some ground.
Andrew Heaney rostered in 53% of Yahoo leagues, 91% of online championships over on NFBC. That's 12 teamers. So still available in more than a handful of those leagues for FAAB bidding. We say this week in, week out. It's always worth the time spent to check your wire. If you don't think someone's available, just Google, just search their name, Control F, whatever you need to do, and just find out. Do the due diligence.
You know what you do, too, I think you probably guys have talked about this, is check out the previous week's drops. Because sometimes they don't float up in a sort list. So always go over, not only check out who was picked up, check out who was dropped. Because for whatever reason, they may not be on the radar of some people. And it's a great way to keep up with potential influential players. Anyway.
I think I found the title for this week's episode. Maybe we'll see later.
We haven't even gotten to regression yet.
But we definitely touch on that. And what's easy about that is that you're going to check the results of your FAAB every week anyway. So when you're checking the results, You see all the drop players from your league right there. If you see somebody halfway interesting, just add them to either your watch list or just put them in your bid list. You don't have to actually save it, but at least he's there. So that by the time you are finalizing your bid list, you don't have to go searching for it later.
Right.
So it's a good call out, Todd. All right, Kevin, and we'll finish out the AL East with Baltimore. They gained absolutely no one. They did lose Freddie Galvis in their infield and then Sean Armstrong. Is there, do you see anything in Baltimore? And feel free to, there's going to be a couple teams that we glaze over here, and this could be the first one. I'm not sure. Let me hear what you have to say.
I'm not going to completely glaze over it, but I'll make it pretty quick here. Anthony Santander, coming back from injury, is available in shallower leagues. Only 6 home runs on the season, but Baltimore has a lot of home games coming up, like 33 games at Camden in the hot summer heat the rest of the summer. So I have interest there, even in shallower leagues. And Ramon Urias is getting the playing time in the infield for Baltimore in deeper mixed leagues. And as we're going to get to here in a little bit, AL only leagues, he's actually putting some at-bats together, and he's eligible at both second base and shortstop. And
he's hitting high up in the order, and the Orioles' order is pretty good up top, right? You mentioned Santander and Hayes and Mountcastle. They can hit. The bottom half's terrible. So the point being, they've been using Urias in the 5 hole and the 6 hole. There's not. You're going to be productive in that point. They flip-flop with Michael Franco. That's a big thing, is to make sure you get the extra at-bats production. Urias has been hitting the 5 hole, and I agree. He is someone to look at.
All right, we'll stay in the East. We'll head over to the National League, Todd. And we'll start off with Atlanta. Made us a bunch of moves. Their outfield looks a whole lot different than it did just a week ago, never mind at the beginning of the season. They brought back Adam Duvall. They brought in Eddie Rosario from Cleveland, switching leagues. Jorge Soler from Kevin's Royals. And then in the bullpen, Richard Rodriguez from the Pirates. They did, quote, lose, I'll use that term loosely, with Pablo Sandoval and then Bryce Wilson, pitcher, both starter and reliever at different points in his young career. So what do you see in Atlanta worth keeping an eye at this coming Sunday night?
I think what they've done is stockpile DHs for when the National League goes DH, and then they can make a bunch of trades. I don't know, guys. Didn't they just acquire names? Who's going to play center field? Right now, it's been Jock Peterson, I guess. I guess Jock is the best. Peterson's the best qualified. I don't think you bring up Christian Pache, when you've acquired all these bats, given Eddie Rosario's not ready yet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, it's a little, I don't know. I guess you bring in, if they're available and they don't cost you much, I guess you bring them in. And then, as they say, these things take care of themselves. I think if nothing else, Peterson was acquired earlier because he's playing center field. He's been playing center field over the weekend. Maybe it firms up his playing time, especially because he's leading off. Maybe that's the thing, is maybe the call is, if Peterson's available or if you have him on your reserve, maybe he should be one of your 5 outfielders, just because he's most likely to play center field now.
Yeah, I think the biggest impact for me is it basically shores up that, like you mentioned, Chris Pache doesn't really have a spot anymore. Anybody clamoring for Drew Waters to be called up in the Atlanta outfield, that's out the window. So I think those things if you're stashing either one of those guys, or at least those who were stashing, as your boy Clay always likes to say, is stashing season, not so much for Drew Waters anymore. So feel free, that'll be a nice easy drop this weekend if you are in that boat.
Yeah, as far as the closer goes with Richard Rodriguez, I think Will Smith's still the guy. And it's more of a way to, Chris Martin hasn't been all that good. It's just another way to, it just extends the bridge. Because I think we haven't mentioned it yet, but because this is our first venture into the National League. Until we get to the NL West, any of these teams we're talking, they need to win the division, because they're not getting in as a wild card. We pretty much figure the wild card comes out of one of the two of the 3 California teams, however all that fleshes out. So when we get to the Mets, they're trying to hold off Atlanta and Philadelphia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's just a way to firm up the bridge to Will Smith at the back end.
All right, we'll start talking about the team that's currently leading the NL East in the New York Mets, Kevin. Of course, they brought in Rich Hill from Tampa earlier in the week. Javi Baez was their piece of the Chicago lineup that they brought over, along with Trevor Williams into their pitching squad. It doesn't really seem like they lost anything worth in their major league on their major league team. So tell me what influence their trades are going to make.
Don't let me
their.
do what you need to do.
Hey. I do.
What are we going to scuffle? Are we going to scuffle?
It's hard to scuffle when you're on like video. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, with all of this, yeah, the Baez is great. The biggest thing for me for the Mets is DeGrom shut down for 2 weeks now. We're not getting him back until September. And that just nullifies Carrasco coming back, who had an efficient 4 innings last night and looked pretty good. And that was going to be great for them. And now he's just filling in for DeGrom. So now Rich Hill and Trevor Williams matter. As far as my fantasy teams go and FAAB, I don't see a lot here.
I know that there were some Mets fans not too happy to see Pete Armstrong leave their system for Javi Baez, but they really didn't do anything that's going to hurt their current situation. And you know what? They are leading the division. These are the moves that they're going to make to continue to do that. We shall see. And maybe Atlanta's moves were enough. But you know what? We're not here to talk about the moves as far as they're impacting the major league rosters. We're talking about FAAB. So let's move on to Miami. Todd, they brought in Jesus Luzardo from the American League from Oakland, and they did lose out Starling Marte to Oakland. They also sent Yimi Garcia over to Houston and the aforementioned Adam Duvall to the rival Atlanta team. Does Jesus Luzardo make an impact for fantasy-wise? He's been stashed in plenty of places, but he's been dropped in plenty of places as well, as he was demoted and basically useless in most fantasy leagues in redraft. So what kind of impact do you see Luzardo making now that he's in Miami? And is there any other impact from losing the other guys that they lost in their rotation or in their lineup?
Yeah, so we'll start with Luzardo. He's on the major league roster, which is good because some leagues you can't bid on players if they're in the minors. I'm specifically thinking about NL only leagues where somehow the bid or the pickup can become a keeper, be it on the salary. However, if you can get him at a price that's a decent price for next year, teams that are rebuilding should definitely look into Jesus Luzardo. He may get a shot with Miami. Remember a couple of weeks ago, Miami's run differential was like the biggest in the division. It's now down to 50-50. In other words, they're starting to play towards their record. They may have a negative run differential before long. So that's why when you talk about run differential and lucky and unlucky teams, all those studies were done on a year's worth of data. So anything you do in season is still subject to variance. But anyway, I do Luzardo long term, and I think it's promising, or I don't know, have a little confidence that Miami did their due diligence and they wouldn't have traded such a big trading chip of Starling Marte for Luzardo if they had any questions about his long-term health. Kevin likes to talk about his teams. So I have Luzardo in a keeper dynasty format, the XFL. And I was a little bit happy that Miami's doing the same thing I did. I traded a very high-priced Jacob deGrom to get Luzardo. So it gives me a little more confidence that it'll pay off long-term. As far as losing Marte, it's just a matter of your desperation. If you think Lewis Brinson, if you think Sierra are going to step up and maybe realize some of the potential that we were talking about for years, maybe steal a few bags if you're desperate for some steals, but they can hurt you in so many other areas. Mm-hmm. I think it'll open up a pathway for playing time for those two guys. It depends on your desperation and risk aversion, whether you're willing to take advantage or want to try to take advantage.
And then, of course, with Yimi Garcia leaving as well. Yeah. It opens up their closer option. So we had a nice long conversation with Greg Jewett of The Athletic last week. But I want to hear what you have to say as far as who do you expect to move into that role in Miami?
I think Anthony Bender will be given the opportunity. He may not be the guy now. I think I work for ESPN. I think we've got Dylan Floro, unless I'm mixing up teams, which I often want to do in that spot. No, it is really, I think we've got Dylan Floro listed on our closer list, but I think Anthony Bender, we're at RotoWire, we have Bender number one. I do think, and Howard Bender's number one. I should go and do it. Another, fantasy alarm. Howard Bender's always number one. But yeah, and Miami's, they're not terrible. They're gonna get some wins. So many pitchers are hurt. The guy I'm keeping an eye on, I know we're talking about the trade, but I think Edward Cabrera at some point gets a look. So we're talking about stashing, checking your waiver wire. And I don't like this rule in the NFBC, but it exists, and therefore you have to play by it. If Cabrera was drafted and dropped in your league, he may be, and you've got the spot, he may be something to throw, especially this week when it'd be a lot of activity, even in mixed leagues. And you throw a buck or two on a guy like that, and if he doesn't come up in a week, you curse me out and you drop him. That's all.
That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, worse has been done.
Yeah, sure. All right. Yeah, for what it's worth, Rick Graham over at Pitcher List did plug in Dylan Floro to start as the most safe starting closer. Those things can change. Anthony Bass was pitching in the ninth today, though Miami is down 2 runs. Probably not an option there. All right, Kevin, up north of Philadelphia, I heard a lot of clamoring about how they weren't actually making any moves, or at least not moves that were actually going through. But they finally did make a move with Texas. They brought in Kyle Gibson into their rotation and then closer Ian Kennedy. And they did bring in the aforementioned Freddie Galvis from Baltimore. They lost out on Spencer Howard, which was a little surprising, at least to me. We'll see how Texas handles Howard in the future. But what do you see happening in Philadelphia that's worth monitoring?
I am guessing with the mess that Philadelphia's bullpen has been all season that Ian Kennedy is the closer. In fact, I do believe I saw that actually officially announced that Ian Kennedy is the closer.
I don't think I've ever actually seen like an official announcement. Yes, this brand new player we just brought on will be our closer because the rest of our bullpen's a mess.
Yeah, right. So I was seeing that this afternoon. I was like, did I really see that? And so that is the biggest impact. Kyle Gibson, for as good as he's been most of the season, has been bad, really bad recently. Walks, home runs, he's given up everything. I think Todd's been tweeting about it over the past couple of days even. And so the biggest thing for me is Kennedy.
Yeah, if Todd tweets about it, it must be true.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I'm most interested in this. I like this move for Spencer Howard, but I'll save that for when Texas comes up here in a little bit.
Yeah, we haven't talked much NL only, but Kyle Gibson would not be high up on my wish list. And yeah, if you have Ian Kennedy in a mixed league, this is the perfect team for him to have been traded to keep the job. Anywhere else, he probably would have been setting up. This is perfect.
Yeah, I was really hoping, as a avid Richard Rodriguez rosterer, I was hoping he would land in Philadelphia rather than in Atlanta for that exact reason. All right, Todd, we will finish out the NL East with Washington, who obviously was made half of the biggest move at the deadline. They did bring in a new catcher, Kyber Ruiz, a new pitcher, Josiah Gray, both obviously from the Dodgers, and then Lane Thomas as well. They lost out on a little guy you might have heard of, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, relievers Daniel Hudson and Brad Hand, of course. And then Josh Harrison and Yan Gomes went later on during the day on Friday. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention John Lester leaving as well, going over to St. Louis to join the very experienced rotation that the Cardinals now have. We'll get to them a little bit later. A lot of moves, a lot of moving pieces in Washington. These are the types of teams I think that obviously have a little bit more impact in FAAB as new players get new roles. Maybe players get called up. What are you seeing in Washington that may be worth keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, Juan Soto's RBI totals are going to drop. The other, it's worth at least mentioning since we're talking about it, Washington announced that once Starlin Castro's suspension has ended, they are going to release him. So, I mean, if anybody has still been, for whatever reason, holding on to Starlin Castro, it's time to let go. Yeah, as you suggest, it opens up opportunities. This is a team that's been using Alcides Escobar. They're probably going to continue to use Alcides Escobar, and I'll continue not to pick him up. Louis Garcia is interesting. There's 4 Louis Garcias. This is the one, as we're saying, in Washington, middle infielder. He and Escobar will be playing up the middle. A little bit of pop. I think it's someone to consider if you're really hard up. I don't know that you can make an argument. It's nothing near as exciting as an argument as, say, when Bobby Witt comes up. He was hitting 303, 371 OBP and a 599 slug for AAA Rochester. Doesn't have a whole lot of speed, but you never know. Lightning in a bottle is someone to look at for the middle infield. Kyder Keyboom, same idea, playing a little bit of third base now. If I think maybe one of the repercussions is because there's no reason not to, Victor Robles, if he happens to get on, may just run wild. There's no reason for him at this point not to. He's going to get on, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I had a conversation with a league mate of mine about, he has Trey Turner, and I was talking to him about how he was asking whether or not the Dodgers would let him run. I'm like, it's Trey Turner. You're going to let him run. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And as looking into that, like, Washington doesn't have a whole ton of stolen bases as a team without Trey Turner. So I do wonder what their overall mentality is when it comes to stolen bases.
They don't have a bunch of guys that can run. The upper repercussion might be that Robles hits at the top of the order. Matter of fact, I think he is hitting at the top of the order. He was out a game, and I think he's back in. Looking at the pitching real quick, Gray, obviously long term, is still, which is why they acquired him for Scherzer. He is an impact type pitcher. What to expect this year? Not really sure, but he is again in a keeper league. He probably already had him because it was within the same league. But if you're looking for someone for this year, he isn't the kind of guy I want to keep on my roster. He's a streamer, and I'm not, you treat him as any streamers now. Closing, because they do now need a closer. Kyle Finnegan got the first shot, and it looks like he could be the short-term guy. Tanner Rainey has the stuff, but
he's been awful.
Needs to be able to throw strikes. The long-term guy, and I haven't done a ton of legwork on this myself, is Mason Thompson. Could get a look in September. How many innings, how many opportunities he gets remains to be seen. But someone like Mason Thompson could get a look further on down the line if you're looking for a really deep stash. He closed 7 games for El Paso. So you can't always say that the closer of the future because he was closing on the AAA team, but he was closing on their AAA team.
All right, we'll move back to the American League, go over to the Central, go to Kevin's Royals. Kevin, I was really expecting to see the entire bullpen gone. At least Greg Holland and Wade Davis, they're still there. Barlow was the only one that I saw any actual chatter about, and obviously he's still there. The only pieces that I saw dealt away from Kansas City were Danny Duffy, who is still injured, going over to the Dodgers, and then Jorge Soler going over to Atlanta. Did not see Kansas City bring in any major league pieces from those deals. Talk to me about your Royals and what's going on in Kansas City and why we might actually care.
The thing I'm most excited about, even though in 4 previous times it hasn't worked out, is Edward Olivares.
You can say it.
Good. Edward Olivares. That's what I'm most excited about. And with Soler gone, he might get some run here. Now, before Olivares, what was called up to take the place of Lucius Fox today, I considered using Gerard Dyson as my speed guy for tonight because Dyson is playing right field. He's been playing right field the last 3 nights since the trade was made. But hopefully this is Olivares' spot. Now, here's the thing. We haven't heard anything for 2 weeks on Mondesi, but Mondesi has been on the field doing drills and hitting for 2 weeks. So he could be back any day, which sends Whit Merrifield back to the outfield when Lopez moves to second base, and that blows this all out of the water unless they let Olivares play center field where Michael A. Taylor is at. I just want to see Olivares get a shot at some consistent at-bats. This may be his only opportunity. Like I said, but with Mondesi coming back, Merrifield's going to go back to the outfield. They're not taking Lopez out of the lineup. Nicky Lopez is the Royals' best hitter, taking away Salvador Perez's home runs. Right?
He's really screwing yourself. He's really screwing your team by hitting so well.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome defense. He's by far their highest WAR player. And that's exactly the type of player that Dayton Moore and the Royals organization loves. So he's just sliding to second base when Mondesi comes back, which Merrifield to the outfield. But I really hope we, at least for a few days until Mondesi is back, get to see what Olivares can do. For us, I can't use him. Like I said, until the Olivares called up, I was considering Dyson for some speed. He was going to be in the lineup every day. Now I hope that's Olivares, but it's probably going to be a mixture of the two.
We'll see how long Olivares stays up at the major league roster.
He's got a lot of
Remember the beginning of the year.
Yes,
he does. Remember the beginning of the year, all we were talking about was Kyle Isbell. Like, what happened to Kyle Isbell? At least Isbell wasn't being jerked around the same way that Olivares has been over the course of the last month and a half, 2 months.
He's not playing well enough to be jerked around. That's the frustration, is Olivares hasn't earned the shuttle. He's earned the right to stay on the big league team.
Exactly.
Or at least given the ability to show that.
I'm wondering, the DH spot with Soler gone, I think there's a possibility that Olivares could work in, whether it be at a DH. I think the at-bats, there's enough shuffling around. If the team really wants to get a look at him, that's going to be the key. They'll find a way if they want to.
Mm-hmm. All right, Todd, we'll move over to Cleveland, who got rid of a couple outfield pieces, Eddie Rosario, Jordan Luplow, and then pitcher Phil Maton. Brought in Pablo Sandoval, who isn't expected to really do anything for them. And then also Miles Straw is now in their outfield, probably leading off. And talk to me about Straw's impact in Cleveland and any other things that you might see worth noting.
Yeah, I usually let others analyze deals, and I'll just take care of the fantasy stuff. There were only two deals that kind of made me go, huh? And one of them was the Sandoval deal, just because I assumed it had to be Pablo Sandoval Jr. But really? What was up with that? To save a prorated portion of $7 million? That's why you made the move? Come on. Anyway, fantasy, whatever. Nothing doing there. But the other deal, I don't understand why Houston got rid of Straw, but who cares? They did, and that's all we care about. Like you said, lead off, and he's going to run. And he's getting on base. So the stolen base category, it depends upon where you are in your standings, but the normal shape of the stolen base curve in leagues is very striated at the top and bottom and bunched in the middle. So if you find yourself in one of those spots where you have to keep in mind that your opposing teams are still going to keep accruing steals. So right now, 5 steals gets me 4 points. It might not get you 4 because they're getting, other teams are also continuing to amass steals. So maybe it gets you 2 or 3. But the point being, the category can be influenced by one player. And we're not quite at the quarter pole yet. We can still do some damage. So yeah, I love Straw leading off in Cleveland. I don't know what the heck Houston's doing, but like we said, who cares fantasy wise? Now, how does it, play other places? I don't know. This is a team that it's just so frustrating. Granted, some of their best pitchers are hurt, so I understand why they're not going for it. But I don't know. Giving away Eddie Rosario, I don't know. Maybe they're like pandas. I don't know.
I don't know. Personally, as a Franmil Reyes manager, I do hope he gets a couple more outfield spots before the end of the year so he can regain outfield eligibility for 2022. But that has nothing really to do with FAAB.
I'm in a goofy league that has a 2-game eligibility, and Nelson Cruz is halfway there. And I really want that. I have a friend who's in a 1-game league, and he's all excited because he can get Anthony Rizzo at second base.
Nelson Cruz was, if I'm not mistaken, slated to play first base for Tampa Bay, and then was scratched that day after.
So maybe he didn't get that one in yet.
The first. Yeah, that's the one you're referencing. He was scratched on Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay. All right. At least they're thinking about it. Exactly. They're thinking about it. Anyway.
All right, Kevin. We'll go to Detroit, who, as I'm sure Paul Spohr is ripping out his hair because they made pretty much no moves. They gained Reese Olson.
He's too vain to rip out his hair.
That's probably true. And then did lose out on Daniel Norris.
Vain, I'm just kidding. No, Derek Carty wouldn't rip his hair out. That's Carty would never. Paul, he might.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you think about Daniel Norris heading out of Detroit? And is there anything else worth mentioning here?
Not anything new in my mind. I've been talking quite a bit about Detroit the past couple of weeks. I like some of the guys in their lineup. I tweeted out the other day that no team in baseball or that's not how it was. Detroit has scored 19 more runs than any team in baseball over the last 30 days. They're scoring runs. And I like Derek Hill. I can't believe they kept Scope, but that's great for those of us that roster him. I like even Victor Reyes is playing most days, be it in the 9 spot. But I like some of these Tigers, but I don't see much new.
No, not much to report in Detroit. So we'll move on to Minnesota. Todd, they brought in Joe Ryan, currently pitching over in Tokyo in the Olympics, and then John Gant as well, as they let go of J.A. Happ along with Hansel Robles over to Boston. Jose Barrios goes to Toronto, and the aforementioned Nelson Cruz. So what's going on in Minnesota, who's also without Alex Kirilloff for probably the remainder of the season? What's worth noting here?
Yeah, Kirilloff is gone. At least I've zeroed him out of my stuff. But yeah, this is interesting in that I'm curious to see what Minnesota would have done. Was it just a bad year? But the trades they made, I don't know that the trade they made, getting in Simeon Woods Richardson and Austin Martin, I don't think it's going to try to win next year. I think they may think their window's a little bit longer than that. So I did find it to be a little bit curious, that deal. I don't think it affects anything this year, really. I can't see, other than maybe Brent Rooker getting a little more playing time now, especially if you're able to use him against left-handed pitching, but he should be playing against most everybody at this point. I don't see a whole lot of pearls of wisdom to share with the Minnesota Twins. I don't really think there's a ton on the pitching end of things either. And I'm not going to tell you to run out and get John Gant. That had to be a salary dump as well. Maybe Gant is one of those guys he's only 28. Maybe he could find himself, but he's no one. I don't want to pick him up this year. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if Joe Ryan makes his way up to Minnesota before the end of the year.
Yeah, there is something there. The fact that he's pitching is a good thing because he's had some injury stuff. But yeah, that's somebody maybe. Remember, there's no roster expansion this year. He'd have to come up on the 26th man. Not that they couldn't find a spot for him, etc. And he's a little bit older now. He is now 25. And he was starting this year. He's one of those guys where if he fails as a starter, you feel he's fairly certain you can have yourself a dominant reliever, but you certainly want to have him a shot starting first.
Yeah, it just seemed like Minnesota was just trying to collect as many Olympians as they could between Simeon Richardson and Ryan. Not a bad thing. All right, Kevin, we'll finish out the AL Central with the Chicago White Sox, who replaced their second base option. Of course, Nick Madrigal not only leaving, but he out for the season as well. They replaced him with Cesar Hernandez from Cleveland, and they also put in a couple of more bullpen pieces from Chicago, from the Cubs, Ryan Tepera and Craig Kimbrell, and they lose out on Cody Hoover in the process as well. So what's going on with the White Sox, and is Kimbrell still going to get any saves, obviously with Hendricks being the main guy there?
I think it's a split. Got to continue to use either one, but your production in the save category itself is probably going to drop off a little bit. The biggest thing here for me in shallower leagues where he's available, Cesar Hernandez, the 47 RBIs while leading off in Cleveland, that's amazing. And he's hitting in the 2-hole. I know Eloy Jimenez is out of the lineup the last couple of nights, but I think they just slide him in that 4 spot where Sheets is, and everybody behind him goes down. I think Hernandez stays in the 2-hole between Tim Anderson and Jose Abreu. And like I said, 47 RBI to this point, leading off. It being in the 2-hole in this White Sox lineup, that should definitely be appealing to the 70% of Yahoo leagues where he's available.
Worst case, he's hitting 5th or 6th. Which I think may flesh out towards the end, but exactly. If what he loses from hitting leadoff the park and the more potent lineup certainly helps Hernandez, and he's not running, but he's flashing some power this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did or hoped that they'd see some stolen base opportunities from Hernandez. They've been going down every year for the last couple of years and not running at all this year, as Todd mentioned.
Yeah, keep in mind that Louis Roberts coming back too, which could push him down once Roberts back.
Yeah, I'm just upset to see Cesar Hernandez come in to take the second base gig away from Andrew Vaughn, and that would have been something that I would like to see long term.
I love this move for Chicago, by the way. I'm a big Cesar Hernandez fan. I think Chicago, under the radar, I think it does help for fantasy, but their top 3 has to pitch at their top of their game in every playoff series, but they can match up with anybody. I think they could be to say a team this could be a spoiler is silly because their record's so good, but I think they could be the equivalent of be a spoiler because the other teams are more highly thought of and spending more money. I think the White Sox are going to be fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we'll move over to NL Central, go just across the town to the Cubs. And Todd, they gained the aforementioned Nick Madrigal from the White Sox, Anderson Espinoza, and Cody Hayward. They lose out on a whole bunch: Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, and then in the bullpen, Ryan Tepera and Craig Kimbrell, and then Trevor Williams, and then also Jake Marisnick. So, who's taking over all these spots for the Cubs that are obviously now left over from pretty much their entire core of their World Series team on different teams?
Madrigal's in. He's obviously out for the year, but you really want to have a middle infield of Nick Madrigal and Nico Horner in Wrigley Field? I don't know. That was weird. So the repercussions, if there are any, are Patrick Wisdom is the guy. He's been playing a lot. He's going to continue to play a lot. So if you're thinking about dropping him, he's going to be the guy. Matt Duffy will get a long look at third. He's not great, but in certain situations he can help if you need some depth. The main repercussion, and again, I talk about liking Cesar Hernandez. It's known I'm a big Ian Happ fan, and maybe this is just confirmation bias or whatever you want to put on it. But he was losing playing time to Rafael Ortega the past couple of weeks. If nothing else, Ian Happ should get a chance to salvage his last 2 months. I'm not going to spout numbers and let's say Fantrax, StatCast, and just spew a bunch of numbers expecting to tell you why to pick up Happ, other than the numbers were there coming into the season. I can't believe he's that bad. I've already dropped him in a lot of places. If I can stash him, if I can repick him up and stash, I'm going to wait till he does something. But I think that the biggest repercussion is Ian Happ will now have 2 months to salvage his season.
That is music to Kevin and I's ears as we roster him in our Pitcherless Podcast Network League. So it'd be nice to see him getting that extra playing time. So keep an eye on that as well.
Or maybe it won't be nice if you're using it.
That's true.
We shall see. Now, the closer, and you mentioned Hewer. There's a possibility that Hewer gets an audition to close. He may close out the 3 remaining Cubs wins. Who knows? Because you mentioned Tepera, who would have been logical. He was having a really good year. Dan Winkler, Rick's brothers. Who knows? But it may be Cody Hewer is supposed to be a dominant reliever type of guy that just right now needs to throw a few more strikes and keep the ball in the yard. It'll be interesting to see if the White Sox give him a chance. He had 13 holds with the White Sox. So they were using him in leverage scenarios despite a 5.12 ERA. So the Cubs must have wanted him. There must be a reason why the Cubs elected Hewer in that deal. So we'll have to find out.
Yeah, I think a lot of eyes are on Rowan Wick, who's on a rehab assignment with AAA Iowa for the Cubs as well, to come back and then maybe take control of his old role with Chicago. But to your point, Todd, how many saves opportunities is anybody going to get for the Cubs for the remainder of the last
Phillies.
2 months?
There's some also-rans. They're going to play the Pirates, and they're for better or worse, the rotation stayed intact. Hendricks is still good, and Al Saleh is coming up, and Jake Arrieta is my lowest ranked pitcher next week at Colorado, so I know my algorithm works.
There you go.
But, yeah, we'll see.
All right, we'll move up to Milwaukee, who didn't make a whole lot of moves themselves. Kevin, they did add in Eduardo Escobar from Arizona, and then the aforementioned Daniel Norris from Detroit, giving up on Reese Olson as their only piece that they really let go. What kind of impact do you see Escobar and Norris making with Milwaukee?
I think the biggest fantasy impact is if you were still holding Keston here, you can go ahead and drop him now. He's not coming back barring injury from some of these guys. And that's basically it. I think Escobar is a great addition to this lineup, and the Brewers are another team that it's going to be fun to watch down the stretch.
I think Rowdy Tellez is making it really fun at first base, playing pretty much every day at first base for the last week or so for them as well. Not a deadline acquisition, but a recent acquisition for the Brewers. All right, Todd, we'll go over to Pittsburgh. They did bring in Michael Chavis from Boston, and they let go of Adam Frazier and Tyler Anderson, and of course, Richard Rodriguez as well in their bullpen. We'll start off with the closer situation in Pittsburgh. Who do you see taking that role there? And then are we going to see Chavis in a more everyday role in Pittsburgh as opposed to what we were seeing in Boston?
David Bednar is not a bad name to stash for closers. We've mentioned a few potential closers. We now in NL-only leagues, Ian Kennedy's the guy to get. And we've talked about a couple of the scenarios with Anthony Bender and Dylan Floro. Bednar should be the guy. How many opportunities is afforded, again, is a question, is up in the air. But J.G. Brubaker, Chad Kuhl, they're not a couple of pretty decent arms. They should get a few save opportunities down the stretch. Curious to see where they're going to use Bryce Wilson. Apparently, it looks like at least to start, he'll be in the bullpen. Whether he's a long-term starter, I don't know. But I like next to, I haven't actually done out my priorities list, but from our discussions, right now I have the NL closers in NL-only leagues to be Kennedy and Bednar. And as far as new guys in mixed leagues that could get the job, I think Bednar is pretty high up on that list.
Yeah, unfortunately, Bednar came in the 8th today. It's the 8th inning, but he got a blown save. Did let up a run to tie the game at 2. And Chris Stratton got the win in the final inning, closing out that game.
Yeah, like I said, Chris Stratton's the guy to get. I have not followed, have not caught up on today's games yet. I find it interesting that did it look like it was going to be a 2-inning save? I'm curious why. Does that now look like the pecking order? And it looked like Stratton might get first dibs, maybe out of respect for the career. I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't give your shot to the guy who's more likely to keep it for many years.
Yeah, I completely agree. I picked up Bednar in a more than a handful of places after as the deadline was happening. And it is definitely possible he could have been coming in for what could have been a 2-inning save. He did pitch just, I think, 2 days ago as well, but it's an interesting situation. We'll see how it goes. Richard Rodriguez, for all things you say, how many opportunities is Pittsburgh going to provide? Rich Rod had plenty of saves for himself. Bad teams still provide save opportunities. When we joked about the Cubs, how many they're going to as well throughout the season, the opportunities are still going to be there. It's just a matter of whether or not one guy's going to get them all. All right, Kevin, we'll go over to Cincinnati, who didn't make a whole lot of moves themselves. They did bring in Luis Sessa and Justin Wilson from the Yankees, and then Michael Givens from the Rockies. Didn't seem to really give up anything of note on their major league roster. Do you see any of these guys making an impact with an eye specifically on Givens in the bullpen?
Yeah, watching this game right now, they do have a lead in the 9th inning, 1 run over the Mets. So I'm interested to see what happens in the 9th. Lorenzen pitched the 8th. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Givens gets a shot here, as messy as this bullpen situation has been. And that's the main thing I'm watching.
Yeah, we'll make sure we update that during the show because I'm sure the game will end before the pod does. Todd, we will go to St. Louis. As you mentioned, they brought in J.A. Happ from Minnesota, John Lester from Washington, let go of Lane Thomas and John Gant. Is there anything worth mentioning in St. Louis for the Cardinals?
For those that play in NL Central only leagues, you guys got nothing. Oh man, I feel bad for both of you that play in a 2-man NL Central only league. No, Lester, good Lord. You alluded to it earlier. You're probably saying the same tweet or whatever. What is the average age of their rotation now? 37? And it's just silly.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't see. There's really nothing to me. Nothing to see here as far as St. Louis goes. They usually find a way to hang in there. I think this is maybe the first year I can recall that we're not even saying if this happens, if that happens, the Cardinals will be right there. I just think the Cardinals are, for a rare time, waving the surrender flag and just trying to get Adam Wainwright more Hall of Fame stats.
Yeah. Hey, you got to do. All right, we'll move on to the AL West. Kevin, will start in Houston, getting rid of Miles Straw, and then Abraham Toro in an earlier deal to the Mariners, bringing in Kendall Graveman, and then bringing in Yimi Garcia from the Marlins, and then Phil Maton as well into their bullpen. So what distinctions are happening in Houston worth keeping an eye on?
I think it's cements playing time for Chas McCormick in spite of a 32% strikeout rate. And he's got the power. 10 home runs, 35 RBI, 32 runs scored, and 178 plate appearances. That's a 190 guy. And he's going to play every day the rest of the way. So in the few leagues where he hasn't been picked up, probably due to the 239 batting average scaring people away, in that lineup, he hits towards the bottom, usually in about the 7 spot, but I don't care where you hit in that lineup.
Yeah, I think we talked about it before. It's like you just want a piece of that lineup in general. If Chas is that guy, then you're happy to have him. Good call out there. All right, Todd, we'll move over up to the aforementioned Seattle Mariners, who brought in Abraham Toro, who I saw this tweet too, and I feel bad on not giving credit for it, but he's the first player to homer against the team and then for a team in back-to-back days or something crazy like that. I thought that was pretty cool. Diego Castillo comes over from Tampa, and then Tyler Anderson joins. They actually are the ones that ended up with Tyler Anderson and not Philadelphia into their rotation. Kendall Graveman leaves along with JT Chargois to the Tampa Bay. So what's happening in Seattle and why should we care?
I guess we should care because they're still in wild card contention. It's just kind of musical chairs with the with the relievers. Whether it's now for a day, we thought it was Paul Sewald, right? But then we are not sure anymore with Castillo. Is Tyler Anderson the target in an AL only? Yeah, I suppose. Seattle's a good place to pitch. Yeah, so you put him, if you got 5th or 6th on the FAAB list, you end up with Anderson and maybe you solve a starter. But Toro's what he is. Like you mentioned, he had one of those on a heater, but he's nothing special. He's been playing some second base. Kyle Seager's still at third. And Dylan Moore and cycling all these other second basemen in, Shed Long. I'm not gonna chase those home runs. So I don't know that there's a whole lot. I don't know there's a whole lot to see here based upon the moves. To me, it's just a bunch of parallel stuff, and we're still guessing with Castillo and Sewald over the bullpen.
Yeah, Sewald did come in the 8th inning on Friday got the hold. And then Castillo did pitch the 9th, though the save opportunity was gone as they scored an extra run, putting it out of reach. There's something to be said about what happened in the very first opportunity.
Sure. But yeah. If I'm prioritizing him, I'm going to prioritize Castillo. Yeah, I think he's got a bit of the cachet, the history, and plus the whole vibrato about don't worry. There's a reason why we traded Kendall Graveman. Diego Castillo? Is that the reason? If that's what Seattle has to do to justify trading away their erstwhile closer, then I guess that's what they're going to do.
All right, Kevin, we'll move down to Texas. They brought in Spencer Howard from Philadelphia, as we mentioned, and they sent Joey Gallo, Jolie Rodriguez, Kyle Gibson, and Ian Kennedy packing to various teams, the Yankees and Philadelphia, respectively. What do you see out of Howard, as you mentioned earlier, in Texas? And then what openings do the other shipouts create?
I just want to see what Texas can do with Howard. It seems like they've the whole Lance Lynn reclamation, and then Kyle Gibson was performing well until the past 3 or so weeks, as we talked earlier. It seems like they've done some nice things with their pitching staff. I'd like to see what they can do with Spencer Howard, and he may get the opportunity here to start stretching out yet this season until that he gets to a point where they don't want to overwork him coming off the shortened season. There's a name here that he started his MLB career 0 for 20, but I have some interest in Curtis Terry. He was hitting with some power at AAA. He's been in the lineup the past couple of nights for the Rangers. He had 17 home runs in 235 at-bats while hitting close to 300, 375 on base, 583 slug at AAA. I'm keeping an eye on this guy, and maybe even if I have an empty spot that I'm not going to use for other purposes, I may grab him while he's next to free this weekend.
Nice.
DH only in a lot of places, which is a little bit of a hindrance, but maybe not.
And before we get your take on the closer situation in Texas, if there even is one, I'm just going to throw out Heath Hembree is in for the Reds in the 9th inning with a run lead. So Givens, we'll see. Maybe he makes his way in, but we'll see how this one ends. But going back to Texas, Kevin, with Ian Kennedy gone and Jolie Rodriguez gone, who we speculated on in previous podcasts, who are you looking at to gain? Again, we'll recycle the joke of the 3 save opportunities that the Rangers may provide from here on out.
Well, I liked Patton. He came in the 9th and gave up the run, so he had the opportunity tonight, and he's back out there in the 10th. So possibly, and has given up another run just now. He may have blown his shot already.
Yeah, I think a lot of eyes were on John Sabose, if I'm saying his last name correctly as well. He was just he just joined back with the Major League squad. So, as Kevin just mentioned, something worth monitoring as we're recording. By the time you listen to us, obviously you'll know a little bit more about how it ended on Saturday night.
DeMarcus Evans is a guy to look for long term. He has closer stuff. Whether or not he gets a shot this year or not, I don't think he's worth the stash, but it's worth every once in a while checking to see how well he's pitching. DeMarcus Evans.
Nice. All right, we'll get out of Texas and go over to Oakland into California, who brought in Starling Marte, Josh Harrison from Washington, along with Yan Gomes, and let go of the aforementioned Jesus Luzardo over to Miami. Todd, what kind of impact do you see that these acquisitions are going to make for the Athletics?
Obviously, AL only. Marte or Rizzo, flip a coin, depending on your team needs, which is more important for you. But right now, I haven't checked to see if there's any reason why. But Josh Harrison, isn't just taking over at second base. Tony Kemp's still getting some run there. Whether it's especially because Tony Kemp's playing against a lefty today. To me, would Harrison be a nice consolation prize in an AL only league? Because he was actually hitting really well for Washington. Or is he just going to be a typical Oakland spare part? So I think that would be maybe we'll get one more shot this weekend before we have to put bids in Sunday night. And there might be another, like I said, I may be making myself look dumb here. There may be another reason why Harrison's not playing. As far as Marte goes, can't tell after one weekend, but I'm a little curious to see how much he runs. Oakland is a team if you can steal successfully, you'll be able to run. So we'll see. I'm curious because, quite frankly, you mentioned I have the hammer and AL labor. I could use some speed. Do I need Marte's potential speed more than Anthony Rizzo's potential homers? We know Rizzo's going to hit homers. Do we know if Marte's going to steal? But he's got a better chance than somebody else. So it's just that's what we have to decide.
Yeah, I heard a lot of chatter in the PL Discord about now that Jesus Luzardo is gone. The interesting name to look out for is Dalton Jeffries, who was just called up to start on Sunday.
Yeah, Kaprelian is on the IL. So
yeah.
It's Jeffries and Ryan Detmers, right?
That's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah.
So name to look. I don't know how much losing Luzardo had to do with Jeffries coming up. Probably none. But it's still an interesting kind of domino effect that ended up happening over the weekend. All right, Kevin, we'll finish out the AL West with the Los Angeles Angels. They gained literally Jason Junk from the Yankees. How can I not use that joke? It's just sitting there for Andrew Heaney. And they let go of Tony Watson, who returns to the San Francisco Giants as well. Junk, obviously, just a prospect, not really going to make an impact at the major league level. But what changes do you foresee in Anaheim worth keeping an eye out based on these moves?
The biggest is what didn't change with Raisel Iglesias remaining with the team. I had been stashing Mike Myers in a couple of spots. But other than that, Mike Trout coming back soon. I know he says it's fine, but he's kind of cut back on his running. Mike Trout has cut back on the running he's been doing on the field before games. We're not really sure what's going on, but hoping to see him back soon. And so that's going to take another outfield spot away. I know a lot of people want to see Joe Adell, who's still hitting home runs at AAA, striking out a little less, not a whole lot less, but a little less in July. But they're going to lose an outfield spot when Trout comes back. So I think that's the news here. Iglesias stayed. Trout's coming back. I don't see a lot going on. It's going to be interesting to see if they can make up any ground in the AL West. But Not a whole lot going on FAAB wise for me here.
Maybe on the pitching side, Jamie Barria, the Dylan Bundy re-experiment failed with flying colors. So I'm kind of curious, is Barria someone, if you don't, some leagues you're forced to start a guy you FAAB, others you're not. I think it's at least the park itself makes it worthwhile. We'll see. I think with Adam Eaton in right field, there is a spot for Trout to go to without really killing anybody else's numbers too much. But yeah, I think you're right. There's not a whole lot going on here.
Yeah, Jared Walsh hitting the IL, of course, and Taylor Ward being demoted as well. All right, well, that finishes out the American League. Let's finish out the National League, Todd, with the Arizona Diamondbacks, who didn't do a whole lot either, sending out Eduardo Escobar to Milwaukee, and Joaquim Soria leaves their bullpen as well, leaving open a quote, I'll use the term closer pretty loosely for Arizona, but closer nonetheless. Opportunity there. Didn't really bring in anybody of note at all for their major league squad. Is there any, besides the fact that they had 5 guys hit the COVID IL recently, what opportunities are you seeing in Arizona?
Not a whole lot. I mean, really, you mentioned the COVID, but I don't see anybody. Keeping in mind that Carson Kelly's now back, Dalton Varsho will continue to play a little bit of center field, even though Marte's back. I don't think there's anything, even the loss of Escobar isn't going to really change things, because with these guys coming back, there's no one new to keep an eye on. As far as the saves go, man, I don't know at this point. I just, again, how many will they generate? We don't know. There's the offense is scoring a few more runs. They were like 1.5 a game. Are we back? Are we at Tyler Clippard time? He did pick up the latest save, so I guess it would be Tyler Clippard. I got him further down on the list. Even though we did talk about Bednar struggling, I think I still will have Bednar ahead of Clippard. Arizona still has some decent pitching with Gallen, and Merrill Kelly has his moments. It's a lot of times that if you have a well-pitched game, you can still pick up a save or two. So I think, you know what? I may actually, at this point, Clippard's got the job. I may rank him above Bednar.
Yeah, that's fair. I heard some chatter, like people wanting JP Pukakis to come back up and take that role. But when he came up before, everybody was talking about that. He never actually took the role then. So I'm not quite certain that he would do it again if he were to get called up this year.
He was recalled yesterday, so he's back.
There you go. So, maybe somebody to keep an eye out and see how he is used, or in what part of the game he is used. You mentioned Merrill Kelly having his moments. He's having a moment right now. He's into the 7th inning, doing pretty good for himself. Gave up a couple runs, but nobody in the bullpen has come in quite yet. So we'll keep an eye on that one. All right, Kevin, Colorado, the team that literally made the one move that they possibly had to in order for me to be able to say that all 30 teams made a move. Michael Givens leaves. Nobody else leaves. They really want all those compensation picks after Story doesn't accept his qualifying offer. What's there to say about Colorado?
I want to say that the recall of Sam Hilliard might be something. And prior to Luzardo going to Miami, and it looks like he's in the rotation, Colorado was going to face 5 right-handed pitchers in Colorado this week. Now it's down to 4. It looks like Luzardo is going to pitch for Miami on the weekend. But in FBC formats, Colorado gets 3 right-handers Tuesday through Thursday in 3 games for the first half of the week. If you're desperate, there could be some power there with Hilliard. Other than that, you're right. They just didn't do anything.
All right. You've heard all the jokes about that on Twitter, I'm sure. So we will leave Colorado alone. They've heard enough. And Todd will move over to the Giants, who did not trade Joey Bart for Chris Bryant, as was reported. But they did bring in Chris Bryant from the Cubs, and they also brought back Tony Watson into their bullpen. Not much else to say as far as who was let go or who was brought in, but what effect does Chris Bryant make in the lineup for San Francisco?
I'm not a Chris Bryant guy. He's been a product of Wrigley Field. He is hitting the ball harder this year than he's hit in the past few years, and he's having a slightly better season. But I'm not a Chris Bryant guy. I think he'll be affected by the ballpark. If this hurts Evan Longoria and Brandon Belt when they're ready to come back, maybe that's ultimately the effect of the deal. But I'm not happy I'm happy that Cesar Hernandez went to the White Sox. I'm not happy that Chris Bryant went to San Francisco.
Yeah, obviously, historically not a park that you want to see your hitters on your fantasy team get traded to. Maybe Bryant can make the best of it. We'll see. Obviously, Evan Longoria has when he was healthy. But all right, so Kevin, we'll leave you with the Dodgers, who obviously made one of the biggest moves, if not the biggest move, bringing in Danny Duffy. That was an amazing move. And then, of course, obviously tacking on Max Scherzer and Trey Turner into the mix as well, letting go of Kyber Ruiz to Washington along with Josiah Gray. So what's going on with the Dodgers with those moves? And I'll say it again, like why should we care, especially when it comes to FAAB?
When it comes to FAAB, they're losing guys. This is more about who we're losing with the Dodgers. Anybody still holding on for the fewer and fewer by the week at bats McKinstry was getting. They're going away, especially when Mookie Betts is back in the lineup. It looks like Bellinger's in there tonight. Betts is not. We get both Turners in the lineup now. There's not going to be room for guys like him. Chris Taylor's going to be in the lineup. He's just played his way in to what we thought maybe McKinstry would take part of that. But Chris Taylor's he's always been that guy for the Dodgers, but he's performing and he's keeping that spot. So it's more about that for me. The Danny Duffy thing is interesting for a segment that we typically have later in the show here when he gets healthy in a couple of weeks. If he's going to be there, if both Price and Gonsolin are going to stay in the rotation, and Duffy is indeed the long guy, he's going to be the guy can come in and give them multiple innings as a lefty and rack up a few strikeouts, sometimes get a win that these guys aren't going full 5 innings. But until then, yeah, there's not a whole lot here.
What about when Gavin Lux comes back?
Man, we were joking about
job, right?
He's the 4th guy off the bench at this point.
Yeah.
Which, as far as fantasy goes, hopefully, even when he was playing before he got hurt, you weren't using him at this point anyway. So you probably replaced him. I guess it comes down more to the long term. Is he the second baseman next year when Trey Turner moves over to shortstop? I guess is the bigger question in keeper and dynasty leagues. I'm not ready to give up on him yet, but I would have liked to have seen a little more this year than what we've seen.
Yeah, I think many share that sentiment as you, Todd. I know I started off my season with Lux in a couple places. He's no longer with me, unfortunately. All right, we will finish it off, Todd, with San Diego, who probably didn't make as many moves as one would have expected out of the Padres, especially
or
with
that
their
we
history.
thought they were making for a couple hours.
I don't know. Other than the pitching, yeah, on the pitching side, yeah, I agree. But yeah.
Yeah, they brought in Jake Marisnick into their outfield along with Adam Frazier, who's played a couple outfield games and a couple games at second base already for them, and let go of Anderson Espinoza. And so with these moves that they've made, especially with Frazier, what impact? I did it. I was trying to catch myself all pod. What influence is that move going to have on the lineup for the Padres?
Short term, we hate to say it, not good for the game, but Fernando Tatis is on the IL. And Jake, I'll just tell me where to go. Cronenworth is playing shortstop, and that leaves Frazier for second base, although San Diego does have a few other options. So short term, if you were thinking that Frazier may lose some playing time, Happy's on Pittsburgh. When you hit lead off and you're hitting 337, you're taking the numbers. He should continue to play and let things flesh out. I don't know that there's anything in the upcoming deadline, like we mentioned with the Tatis move. It's taken care of with Frazier, so there's no one else to point out to help out in the short term. So I think it's status quo. And with a few of these teams, including Atlanta, we talked about with the logjam in the outfield, it's a wait and see. It's easy to say these things just take care of themselves when you're playing. When you have to produce the content and put out playing time, you got to put some numbers down. So I can't say these things just take care of themselves. I don't know. Does this give Kim a little bit more playing time? Maybe. But I don't know in a mixed league if I want to go down and take that chance.
Yeah, I wonder about Will Myers being the one that might possibly, he's missed a couple games this week already, but somebody to keep an eye out there as well.
There could be a platoon. No, I always remember, I get Myers mixed up with other players, whether he's a lefty or a righty. I think he's one of the guys I always get wrong.
He is a righty.
Yeah, I always get him wrong.
Yeah.
I actually, it's funny. It's not on the same team, but I always, for whatever reason, I mix them up with Brandon Belt. For whatever reason, they've come up together, and in my head, they both were like batting average on balls and play monsters in the minors. So I always juxtapose the two of them.
All right, that wraps it up, at least as far as the trade influences go across the league, and that's going to wrap up that section of the pod. An hour and a half in, not bad. As always, we try to keep things as focused as possible on our FAAB considerations for this coming Sunday. And there's a whole lot of news that we did not talk about. You should be listening to First Pitch Podcast, hosted by Nick Pollock during the week, and Alex Fast on the weekends. 15 minutes full of the most important things that happen in baseball the day before. Must listen for every day to stay up to date with what's going on across the league, including bullpen adjustments, big-time hitter performances, and starting pitching spotlights. We are going to touch on our focus topic of the week. We have Todd Zola with us. We can't go without trying to pick his brain at least a little bit, Todd. So bear with us. We're going to talk about a subject that we haven't really touched on a whole lot in this pod, and that is the idea of playing in only, referred to as only leagues, or American League only, or National League only, or possibly even National League Central only, as Todd talked about earlier. We talked about at the top of the show, Todd has won his fair share of coveted fantasy leagues, both industry and public. But the one I want to focus on, of course, is the 2016 NL Tout Wars Championship. Todd, you also mentioned that you have the hammer in the American League Labor League that you're in this year. And we don't talk a lot about the only leagues in this pod, but we have you here. I want to be able to pick your brain about the differences that you see or you've seen in playing in those only leagues, especially when it comes to FAAB, that you might not see in 12 teamers or 15 team mix formats, between the players that are available, how much you're spending compared to what you're doing in mixed leagues, and then the value of, as you tweeted out, the hammer, especially when it comes to trade deadline season at the end of July, and the value you find in having that. So talk to us a little bit about the differences there, and put it out there. I have yet to play in an American League or a National League only league, so I'm going to be taking plenty of notes personally, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say as far as like that experience that you obviously have, both winning touted leagues and performing in them year in, year out.
Yeah, though the main difference is obviously the depth of the player pool. So when it comes to free agency, whereas in a mixed league, even in a 15-team mixed league, you're still, the player pool, especially at the beginning, is deep enough that you can churn the roster. You can purposely wait on a position, be a catcher or anywhere, and just keep putting bids in on lesser players until you find someone that sticks. You can do that for catching, perhaps, in an only league, but you're replacing injuries, especially in leagues with reserves. The roster, the free agency in the only leagues is nothing. There have literally been weeks where if your corner infield, as an example, is hurt, there might not even be a corner eligible player to bid on. I'm not talking about guys that are terrible, that have 0 for 2 for the week. I'm talking about that are even legal at the position. It doesn't happen. It happens a couple times during the course of the season. That's how scarce these players can be. So when we talk about FAAB, obviously it's late now because we're at the deadline. But the big decision when you're in these only leagues is, do I give up the hammer early and get what I need or try to improve my roster, or do I nickel and dime so I have the hammer at the deadline, taking the chance that nothing comes over, or that by neglecting to improve your roster early, doesn't matter who you get, it's not going to help you enough. So that's always a conundrum early. And I've found, to be honest, the years, and I've won, I think at this point, 3 NFBC NL only leagues. I haven't played for a while, but back when I was competing in the high stakes only area with the NFBC, I didn't have the hammer. I was always putting in the 6th or 7th or 8th highest bid, taking who I got, and always saying, all right, who's got the hot hammer? Okay, they're in 7th place. I don't care. They can get the best player they want. I spent more time trying to figure out what was going to happen than I did who I'm going to bid on. In other words, I spent my FAAB liberally to replace players and didn't try to miserly hold the hammer. It used to be a lot more efficient to hold, not more efficient, but more, it would help you more if you held on to it. Now, the thing with the only leagues is when for instance, the Super 2 deadline expires, and there's just a couple times during the year where prospects are promoted, and it's become a better, more efficient use of your FAAB dollars to take a shot on those players than to knock on wood and hope that Anthony Rizzo and Starling Marte and Craig Kimbrell, whoever else you want to put, Pablo Sandoval, in that list of players to bid on.
Yeah, I could see that. I think we talk a lot about that Super 2 period and like the time manipulation period, the end of April, a lot on this pod and in mixed leagues in general. But I can imagine that it plays a much larger role in an only league where that player pool options are just non-existent.
Yeah, and this is league dependent. Talking about AL labor, why do you spend? Why do you have the hammer? Some leagues give you a FAAB rebate if your players are injured. Labor gives them only on players that are on the 60-day DL, and I unfortunately had to pay for, and then unfortunately lost Nick Madrigal, so I got his money added back to my total, which is what's giving me the hammer. I wouldn't have had it otherwise. I would have had maybe the third or fourth most, but having the unfortunate of having that injury was able to get it. But now the fun part is, all right, in the AL, we do have a few players that I mentioned, Marte and Rizzo and Kimbrell, and I think you can put, if you need saves, are you going after Brad Hand or Craig Kimbrell? It's Kimbrell may get, I don't know, 6 or 7 if they split. Hand may get 3, he may get 12. So that it's a decision if that's what you need. But now you have to, all right, I have the hammer. All right, in order to ensure I get the guy I want, I have to bid $1 more than the second place amount. But what if I don't care? I just want Rizzo or Marte. I don't care which one it is. I want one or the other. Now I have to bid $1 more than the third place team to make sure I get one of those two. But what if that third place team doesn't want to go all in and wants to leave some FAAB money? Maybe they only spend they have 80, maybe they only spend 70. Can I really play games and spend 75 and save myself some money? So you start to play these, what was Princess Bride, you never get in an argument with a Sicilian, you start going back, that's what you wanted me to do. So I'm in the process of right now of doing exactly that. I want Marte more than Rizzo. I don't think I'm spilling the beans. Anybody happening to be listening in labor, look at my roster, I need steals. So I think, I have a chance to get from the lower third to the middle third. I have a chance to get to maybe fourth place, which pride-wise, I want to do it. I'm not going to win the league. So that's the conundrum I've got. Now, there have been years where there were so many good players or not good players that I didn't. The other thing to keep in mind, and I'm jumping all over the place, in years past, there have been the waiver trades, which if I'm not mistaken, they no longer have the waiver period, so they're not going to be any more August moves. Those have been not disallowed, but they no longer have that. So it used to be, all right, I don't get the player at the deadline. Somebody still is going to clear through waivers. Was it Justin Verlander a couple years ago? That player is not going to clear through this year, so you still want to leave yourself some FAAB to make some moves. So that's the key. Having the hammer isn't always the best thing because, yes, you get the best player, but now you're probably left with the least amount of FAAB left. And can you supplement whatever else you need to ship the league?
I'll also be interested to see how many more call-ups we see, at least in August, especially on the pitching side, as teams try to get pitchers more time on the mound. And with all the moves that we did see this trade deadline opening up a whole lot of opportunity, we see Reed Detmers starting on Sunday.
And Dalton Jeffries, we already we talked about two of them mixed in. The fun part is this is the same week as the trade deadline. It's kind of cool that those are now names that if you didn't think you had a chance, because I've got the 6th or 7th most FAAB, I'm not going to get Reed Detmers. You may now, because 3 or 4 are going after Kimbrell and Hand and Rizzo and Pablo Sandoval. One of these days you'll laugh when I say that, and Starling Marte.
Here's hoping you have the hammer in the labor league. you get who you want and you don't get stuck with Kyle Schwarber as your third place.
Schwarber, yeah. And that's interesting too, is because he's hurt. So he may have been a top 3 guy for power, but now someone may get him with the 8th or 9th most FAAB and still get, I don't know, 6 weeks out of him and have a lot of FAAB left to do other things. It's not the reason to play in only leagues. It is a nice, interesting little twist. I play an NL tout, and I'll be honest with you, I spent a lot of my FAAB in that league. I haven't even begun to look at who's over, who can I get, what do I need help in. I'll spend some time tomorrow doing that, but I focused much more on the AL players coming over because I knew I had the hammer.
Mm-hmm. All right. I appreciate that, Todd. I know I got a lot out of it. Hopefully everybody at home or in your cars or wherever you are listening got a little bit out of that. Let's move on to any other recommendations that we might have that maybe we didn't talk about during the trade portion. I'll try to scatter in some news that may affect your FAAB bidding in these categories as well. We'll stick with our hitting categories to start. Kevin, our power category. We will start off there. Just a couple of news and notes to keep in mind. Of course, Eloy Jimenez, as Todd mentioned, hasn't been playing the last couple games. He left his Wednesday game with groin tightness, has not returned. Corey Seager is off the IL and back with the Dodgers to join Trey Turner when he joins the team, who I think is expected to join early next week after he passes through COVID protocols and what have you. Jared Walsh was placed on the 10-day IL by the Angels effective the 27th, and they recalled Matt Tice to take his place on the roster. Garrett Cooper elected to have season-ending surgery to repair a partial tear in his non-throwing arm's UCL, so he is no longer an option if you still had him. Or if you're like me and missed out on your FAAB bidding last week and forgot to drop him, you can go ahead and drop him this week. So, Kevin, we'll start with you. Any other power hitters out there that may be available in either 12 teams, 15 teams? And if you want to throw in an only league option, go for it. If not, totally understand. So who do you got your eye on?
Guys, we already talked about Santander in shallower leagues for Baltimore. Excuse me. I forgot where he played all of a sudden. He's available in shallower leagues. They have a lot of home games coming up. And in deeper leagues, if you really need some power, Sam Hilliard might get some opportunities this week that we haven't seen him get in quite some time. All home games at Coors Field. It's hot in Denver right now and facing right-handed hitters for the first half of the week.
Man, I love me some Sam Hilliard. I just hate me some Colorado Rockies. So I love for you to be right on that one. Don't get me wrong. Todd, any other power hitters that we didn't talk about via the trade conversations that
we did talk about in the chat? I'm trying to remember who they were. A couple made a note. I don't know. Ji-Man Choi is chasing over a couple of homers lately. I think he got another one tonight, but he seems to have the power stroke down. Don't forget we talked about Miami. Brian Anderson is back off the IL, playing third base. He should be hitting a prominent spot in the Marlins order, and he's got enough power to leave that yard if he needs to. Yeah, again, I think if we mentioned a name already, but I just want to reiterate there was at least 2 names that came up during the trades, and if they come to me, they do. If not, I'm getting old and we'll just blame it on that.
That's fair. All right, we'll move it right along to our speed section. The only news I really want to mention is Jake Fraley is currently on a rehab assignment with the Mariners. Obviously, after being placed on the COVID IL a while back, he hopefully should be back any day now. He is currently rostered in 59% of TGFBI, 79% of main event leagues, and 31% of online championships. So those 12 teamers still rarely available. If you're looking for speed, me personally, I'd be jumping on him, assuming he'd be back for the majority of next week, assuming nothing has gone wrong in his rehab stint. Kevin, do you see anybody else on the wire worth looking at for a couple extra stolen bases?
Yeah, we thought Miles Straw might lead off, and he did tonight, and he's only rostered in 35% on Yahoo, so available in some shallower leagues, and I had Fraley as well, only 6% on Yahoo after the other rostership percentages you mentioned, so he is definitely available in a lot of spots.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it before, and we'll mention it again. Of course, the Yahoo outfield rostership percentages definitely sway just because majority of those leagues have 3 outfield slots. We talk a lot about main event, TGFBI, and other NFBC leagues. obviously having 5 outfield spots as well. So a lot of more options in Yahoo on the outfield specifically because of that reason. Todd, any other speedsters out there that I think we should be keeping an eye out for?
Nice vamp. Now I was able to go back and figure out the power guys. You mentioned, I think Kevin talked about Chas McCormick. He was the guy I was specifically thinking about. Ben Gamel's more power than speed, but he's going to be leading off for the Pirates. I think it's the Miami guys that we alluded to, Sierra and Lewis Brinson, whether they are allowed to run or able to get on base. I think those are the two most likely under the radar. Oscar Mercado, even with Straw, I think he's now getting a little more of the run, especially against lefties. Curious to see what happens with Bradley Zimmer if he's now kaput with Straw in place. So speed, man, it's just so tough at this point. But you can make up the most. Just are you going to give it up elsewhere? Dylan Moore was running left and right for a while, but now he can't get on again. So it's just the way the category operates.
Yeah, the whole adage, you can't steal first base. You got to get on there first. All right, so we'll go to our opportunity category, guys that have good matchups coming up this week, lots of playing time being handed to them. Maybe they added some positional flexibility or they got a new role. Nico Horner left Wednesday's game with an injury and was placed on the IL with a right oblique strain. And then Atlanta's Travis d'Arnaud did start a rehab assignment with AAA Gwinnett, so he could be back with Atlanta soon. So 2 names just to keep an eye on. Kevin, any guys out there that have a good opportunity ahead of themselves worth keeping an eye on?
Yeah, Todd mentioned Rowdy Tellez earlier, and he's got a nice week coming up schedule-wise. He's 13 for his last 32 with 4 home runs, 10 RBI, 6 games all at home this week for Milwaukee, all versus right-handed pitching. This should be a really good week for Rowdy Tellez.
All right, and I will mention before I get your name from you, Todd, a couple schedule notes out there. There are quite a few teams that have a 7-game slate ahead of them. Just to make a note, the Yankees, Boston, Toronto, Cleveland, the Angels, Seattle, Texas, Miami, Mets, Philadelphia, Washington, Pittsburgh, Arizona, and San Francisco all have at least 7 games, with Boston and Toronto having a doubleheader on Saturday of next week, giving Boston 7 games, but then Toronto 8 games with the doubleheader. Only San Diego, the Dodgers, and Oakland have a 5-game slate coming up next week. And always of note, Colorado is home all week with games against the Cubs and Miami. In Denver, only 1 National League team is traveling to the American League, so they get the extra hitter in their lineup, and that is San Diego. They get 2 games out of their 5 in Oakland. But there are 5 American League teams that will lose the DH, with the White Sox, Kansas City, Minnesota, Houston, and the Angels all having a portion of next week's games in a National League park. So something to keep a note on when you're maybe as a tiebreaker when you're looking at your free agent options on the wire. So if you're going to lose it a couple extra at-bats, maybe that's not the option for you. Todd, any players specifically, whether they fit into the narrative that I just mentioned with scheduling or not, that might have a good opportunity ahead of themselves this coming week?
Yeah, looking at the schedule, I'm going to use this thing that I wrote for RotoWire. With the scheduling, I list all the different righties, lefties, and home, away, all the number of games. I like looking at the platoons. Atlanta only has 6 games, but 4 against lefties. So does that give Jorge Soler a little bump this week? Sure. I think you can say that Soler has a little bit of a bump. Let's see. Like you mentioned, Toronto has 6 righties. Cincinnati has got 6 righties. Milwaukee's got 6 righties. Maybe Colton Wong is someone to take advantage of, although they're not playing against teams that you can steal against all that much. But I still think Colton Wong is someone that is underutilized and for fantasy purposes and should be on more rosters. You know what? At this point, Joey Votto's starting to pick up, but I know you guys using the Yahoo rostership. I write for ESPN. His ESPN rostership has been under 50%, and I think we finally got it up over. But Cincinnati has 6 righties, so and they're all at home. So what other lefties are on? Well, Winker's on rosters, but if you're in one of those weird leagues that still has not picked up Joey Votto, man, do it.
Yeah, and if you're picking him up now, you missed out.
That's Hall of Fame advice, right? Yeah. That's Joey Votto. That's Hall of. Geez, come on, Zola, do better than that.
That's why we brought you on, Todd. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Okay. There's got to be somebody.
All right, we will move on to our pitching categories then. The only thing of note really is, of course, Jacob deGrom. It will be shut down for the next 2 weeks or so, reevaluated after that. So we'll see when we might see the best pitcher in baseball back on the mound. But
Chris Sale, he should be back. One more start in the
yeah, there you go. He started. Did he start for Worcester today, or was that?
Yeah, 5 innings, did pretty well. The slider got hit a bit, or the fastball got hit a bit, but he 5 innings, I think 70 or 80 pitches, so he's getting closer. And I'm just tongue in cheek. DeGrom is the guy.
I will be curious to see where Sale ends up on all the various starting pitching lists, including yours, Todd, when he does make his August 10th is I believe the target date for his return.
I'll trust you on that one.
At least I think I read that. I'm sure it was just somebody speculating, but
add 10 to today, add 10 days from today. That'll keep him on pace.
There you go. All right, Kevin, let's see. Do you have any pitchers in mind that you're looking at for this coming? And we actually will return to our future 2-start pitcher options after this section. So for this coming week, what starters do you have your eye on that might get you an extra win or a couple extra Ks to add to your categories?
I like Chris Bubik. He got dropped in a lot of places, available in, almost 80% the TGFBI leagues, I believe. Yeah, he's only 22% rostered. So he gets the White Sox, which we know they have a great lineup, but he just went 6 innings, only giving up 2 runs against them. Another 6-inning outing, giving up 1 run. That was also a start. And this follows what got him back on track. He came in 6 innings of relief against Baltimore, and then has had 2 nice 6-inning starts since then. So he gets the White Sox this week. That one is concerning, but he did handle them in his last outing. And then he gets to go to St. Louis. That doesn't look all that impressive at the moment.
All right. And then, of course, we talked about Reed Detmers making his MLB debut on Sunday, which means he should not be available in most NFBC leagues, but in those other ESPN, Yahoo, and what have you leagues, keep an eye out for him, see how he does on Sunday as well. Because
he was supposed to start tonight, but that got pushed back. Mm-hmm. That's disappointing for NFBC leagues.
So I think he'll be up for at least a few starts, if not the remainder of the season. We'll see. Todd, any starters out there or any pitchers that you think could gain an extra win or two, whether they have 2 starts or 1 start, doesn't really matter. And somebody that's going to tack on an extra win or extra Ks for those teams that are looking for the extra category boost.
You mentioned Heaney, right? Double dip with the Yankees, Baltimore and Seattle, both at home. So if I don't have the rostership numbers in front of me, so I think I have him pretty highly ranked this week. And we've talked a little bit about Texas. It's a good place to pitch. The Angels lineup is still depleted. Oakland's going to be tough, but I don't mind Dane Dunning if you're looking for some stats padding. It's a risk, of course, but if there wasn't a risk, we wouldn't be talking about him. But I'm liking what I'm seeing. He's inconsistent, but I'm liking what I'm seeing from Dane Dunning.
Yeah, if you're like me, at least in one league where you did go heavy on closers so you wouldn't have to worry about it in FAAB, you are trying to make up that extra, those counting static categories and wins in case. So Dunning could be an option there, even if you might take a hit in your ratios. So let's talk about our ratios, ERA and WHIP, maybe long relievers, maybe just somebody with a good opportunity who doesn't give you a lot of strikeouts, like an Alec Mills type of player. And the only news that kind of fits into this that I wanted to mention was Aaron Sanchez did return to the Giants from the IL, and he was placed into their bullpen. So I'm not sitting here telling you to go pick him up for that reason. Just a news note that I noticed that I wanted to throw out there. Todd, I'll start with you. Any ratio guys out there, again, maybe a long reliever or starter who could help those ratios? And I know of all people, you have stumped a lot about how you can make up ground in those ratios, whether it be average, OBP, ERA, WHIP, what have you. So I know this is a category that can still sway in different directions.
Yeah, we mentioned him a couple times, Paul Sewald. I'd like if the second in line on some of these new teams or teams with new closers is a dominant reliever and can help ratios, I think you can pick him up and then hope, knock on wood, maybe get lucky and have him get into some saves. So I think I'd say Sewald heads that list. If the price for David Bednar drops because of his little blow up today, that's not scaring me away. It's one outing. I'm not running because of one outing. So there's an AL and an NL reliever that I would focus on if that's what you want to do, improve ratios.
All right, Kevin, any other guys out there worth looking at to, chip away at ERA and WHIP?
Ryan Sheriff in Tampa. He did get 4-out appearance against the Yankees, 2 outings back, had a bit of a break there, just come back from his IL stint, and then he pitched an inning against Boston. He only had the 1 strikeout in his 2 1/3 innings pitched in those first 2 appearances back. But he's one of these guys, when you just pull up his name and look at his numbers, you see a 6.43 ERA. You don't see he gave up 4 earned runs in 1/3 of an inning, and that's all of it right there. So he's had scoreless appearances in 6 of his 8 this season, and not necessarily someone I'm probably grabbing quite yet, but someone I'm definitely keeping an eye on.
All right, great. And we are gonna jump ahead a little bit, and we're gonna talk about 2 start options for not this coming week, but for next week. So I did put together a list. If you guys scroll down a little bit on our show notes for the week of Monday, August 9th, guys that are currently, or they look like they may find their way into a 2-start week that week. And I only list guys that I notice are less than 50% rostered in Yahoo leagues. And so as you look through this list, Todd, I'll start with you. What's the name that stands out the most? And also give me a name that you see on this list that you think is going to be a little bit more popular that probably shouldn't be.
Oh, Patrick Sandoval stands out, and he's close to 49%. Cheating a little bit, he'll probably be up over 50 by the time we have to make our moves. I'm not a Patrick Corbin guy. So I think if people buy in the name and look at the Mets in Atlanta and maybe aren't all that scared, I'm not going there. I'm not going anywhere near Patrick Corbin. So I'm trying to look at the matchups to see if there's anything that's really enticing. And Chris Flexen, he was striking batters out, but he no longer is, which is reflected in the fact that he's 43%. So he is close to the border. I guess if there's someone that I want to keep an eye on, Tristan McKenzie seems to be walking fewer batters since his recall. And sometimes it's just a couple outings. Sometimes it means he figured something out. So I want to see what McKenzie does this week with 2. And I know one's at Toronto, which is never good. If we're talking the best of the worst, then McKenzie could be on a list.
All right, Kevin, same question. Give me a guy that stands out and another guy that may stand out to the field that you're fading.
I know he's been good in Coors. We've seen guys be good in Coors in the past, and it doesn't continue for very long. We've seen guys do it for an entire season, and it just doesn't continue. But
Coors is undefeated.
You're right. Yes. In the long haul, it will catch up with you. But so Kyle Freeland is very intriguing to me here, getting the 2 starts. I know one of them is at Houston, the other at San Francisco, both nice lineups, but he's been pitching really well. I would be intrigued, even facing the Astros and the Giants. One, I'm staying away from here because I really want to like him. Every week for the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've been looking at JC Mejia, and I just don't see anything there. I don't like him at Toronto versus Cincinnati Reds, even at Detroit. We talked earlier, they're scoring more runs than anybody in baseball.
Mejia was better when he was Gene Carlos.
Yeah.
Right.
It happens when you change your name.
I think the guy that you're talking about fading would be Ross Stripling for me. And I was on Stripling, etc. I'm not liking what I'm seeing. So if he's someone who looks like potentially nice matchups, but I think they may be, trap.
Yeah, though the name I like here a little bit, and if I'll just throw out a name that I don't think I heard you guys talk about, is Alec Mills. And not that I would start him this week at Colorado. Hopefully I have a bench spot if I am looking at him as an option, but facing off at home against Milwaukee and then traveling to Miami next week, that seems that, and obviously Mills is not going to lose his rotation spot at this point with the Cubs. Should be a lock to get those 2 starts coming up. So not exactly a strikeout pitcher, could still rack it up against Milwaukee in a nice little matchup against the Marlins as well. So couple names out there to keep an eye on. As we always mention, a lot cheaper to get these 2-start pitchers this week than it is to wait until next week if you are strapped for your FAAB cash, and most of us are at this point. All right, then we will move to everybody's favorite category, and that is saves. And a lot of save talk, a lot of closer rule movement, as we talked about in the trade section. But Kevin, any names out there? I mentioned Rowan Wick was starting a rehab assignment, so name to keep an eye out for with the Cubs. But any other names out there worth mentioning, or just want to double down on any talk we talked about earlier?
No, you know what? We talked about this last week when Greg was here. It was the only time I liked talking about saves all year. It's been such a frustrating thing all season. We did talk about some of the new opportunities that have arisen, but I think it's going to take a couple of days, see what else is going on tonight. We've been trying to keep tabs on it as we're recording on Saturday evening, and we'll have a lot of day games on Sunday. There's a lot of questions. And I really, honestly, there's nothing new that we haven't talked about earlier tonight or over the past couple of weeks. Nothing new has come up for me.
All right. I will update that Cincinnati situation. Heath Hembury did not end up with a save. He walked his leadoff batter and then threw a wild pitch. Did get a couple of strikeouts, but then was relieved for Sean Doolittle, who blew the save option there, and the Mets ended up going on to win, and Diaz ended up getting the save instead on the other side. So who knows? Givens was not in the game either. Luis Cessa ended up finishing off that game for the Reds. So who's to say what's happening in Cincinnati moving forward? That is something you could have said at pretty much any point throughout the course of the season, and I venture to guess we'll continue to say it for the next 2 months. But Todd, any other reliever situations worth keeping an eye on? Again, if you want to double down on something we talked about earlier.
We've hammered those home pretty well, so it's been a long night. We can move on.
All right.
I will say really quick that Greg was really high on Rowan Wick, but he's still at AAA. He's not available in NFBC bidding yet because he hasn't played at the major league level this season, but it will be interesting to see what happens when he comes up.
All right, I'll give you guys one last chance. Any wild card, speculative ads, whether they be a prospect to stash or a bench bat or somebody that might be that we just haven't talked about. Todd, any other random player worth mentioning here?
Edward Olivares. He was actually he wasn't up when we first did this, and I was going to talk about him. We've hit on so many players at this point that maybe will come to me in the next 2 minutes. But at this point, I think we've touched on so many different players. There really isn't anybody that I can think of.
All right, Kevin, last chance. Any other players worth keeping an eye on for?
No, and I'm going to roll this right into your next question for me because it's like Todd said, there's so many players, so much stuff going on. So many of us have very low budgets right now that this is one of those weeks. A ton of backup bids, right? I'm not going to bid a whole lot on any one player. Todd's in a situation in the only league where that's going to be something that goes on, but I'm going to have $7-8 bids with 12 backup guys. I'll take the one I get in certain spots. I think it's one of those weeks.
Yeah, always a solid strategy in general to have as many backup players as you can to keep the prices down and stretch out your FAAB as long as possible. And this is the time of year where that comes into play even more so, like Kevin said. So good call out there, Kevin. All right, we talked about, as Todd said, we talked about a lot of players today. So if there's any players that you're thinking about bidding on or you want us to discuss, let us know. You can email us over at onthewirepod@gmail.com. You can shoot us a DM on the Twitter at onthewirepod. Of course, you can also join PL Plus over at pitcherlist.com, where you get access to the Pitcherlist Discord and the advice and banter of all the staff and members, all of which who just want to help you win your league. Once again, I'd like to thank Todd Zola for joining us for this extended episode. Todd, could you help remind everybody all the different places that you are putting out content? And is there anything special, specific that you're putting out soon that everybody should be keeping an eye out for?
I write daily notes and do some behind the scenes work for ESPN. There's that. And I write for RotoWire. Nothing special coming out there. The standard, it's behind a firewall, but my standard work for RotoWire. I do MLB Network Radio on Saturdays with Clay Link. We're no longer talking baseball on the Fantasy Network, unfortunately, but we're still allowed to talk baseball on the Baseball Channel on Sirius. It's really cool to talk to Clay for an hour, Clay Link for an hour about fantasy baseball on the network, not the Fantasy Channel. But the thing that I like to refer people to is once a week, I sort of engineer what we call the tout table, which is a question posed to at this point, I think 93 Tout Wars participants. And we usually get 40 or 50 responses in once a week. We post it. Sometimes it's trade philosophy, whatever it might be. We got a cool one coming out, I believe, on Monday, asking everybody's favorite under the radar repercussion of the trade, which I believe I've used. No, I didn't use Edward Olivares because a few other people did use Edward Olivares. In other words, we're talking about all the major moves. What's one of the under the radar backfield type things that go on? We won't get it for FAAB on Sunday, but it'll be up Monday. Toutwars.com. Follow my Twitter. I always highlight when it's out.
Yeah, and a good majority of what Todd puts out should be linked over in the show description as well. Find direct access to everything Todd does there as well. And you should be following Todd over on Twitter at Todd Zola. Of course, that's Todd with 2 Ds. And again, Todd, thank you so much for taking the extra time on a Saturday night to join us for this. It was a ton of fun. Hopefully, everybody listening got a lot out of it. I know I did, and I look forward to hopefully having you back on at some point within the calendar year.
That could be arranged. So hopefully that means there's baseball to talk about, which as a freelancer, I'm crossing my fingers.
Exactly. Whole nother discussion for a whole nother pod. That's going to do it for this week's On the Wire. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and leaving a rating and review is always appreciated. You can follow myself on the Twitter at 80grade. That's all spelled out. And Kevin is at HastingKevin. Keep an eye out for Kevin's weekly FAAB preview article every Sunday over at pitcherlist.com. And you can also follow at pitcherlist on the Twitter for all the updates of all the different articles that come out over there as well. On top of that, you should be following at pitcherlist pods to get updates on every new episode of all the pitcherlist podcast network shows. Make sure to give them all a listen. We wish you all the best of luck in your leagues and hope you win all of your bids by exactly $1. Thanks once again to Todd Zola for joining us. And for Kevin Hastings, I am Adam Howe. With that, we bid you goodbye.